Hi guys, welcome to another POWERPLANT podcast. And today I'm going to talk about How Bad Are Bananas? A book review. So I just read the book How Bad Are Bananas, and it looks at the climate impact of many different choices we have. I think it's about 100 in the book, and it goes from the very small 1 to 10 grams of carbon climate equivalent, and how they define that is they call it CO2e, carbon dioxide emissions, but it's not just carbon dioxide. They take into account obviously carbon dioxide, methane, which is 25 times more potent but has a much shorter half-life in the atmosphere, and all the other gases and resources like water, land use, environmental impact. And another big gas that was taken into account is nitrogen. So something like fertilizer and the excess use of fertilizer in China seems to have a massive impact on emissions. And nitrogen, I think, can be up to 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Again, has a shorter half-life. So if you look at the impact of different things that we do, from the very small, like a glass of water, has a very, very small impact on the environment. Obviously, if you're drinking or using thousands and thousands of gallons, you just scale that up. And it depends where your source comes from. If it's desalinated water, if, for instance, with electricity or gas, where you get the gas and the electricity, how that's sourced. If you're using coal for the electricity, it's got a much bigger impact than using a wind turbine. So a country like Iceland, if you're using a unit of electricity in Iceland, which is very renewable dependent, I guess, which is a good thing, assuming that it can continue to be renewed, compared to Australia, which is very coal dependent, the unit of electricity has a much bigger environmental impact when you use that in Australia. So they took into account lots of different factors, and they also add that the numbers aren't accurate. There's definitely wiggle room, and it's just a ballpark figure. Now, if we look at our food choices in this book, it comes down to eating local, things that aren't transported as far, obviously, with air travel being the real killer. Shipping is not so bad. It's about 100 times less climate impactful than air freight. Local, in season is also important, so greenhouses add up to that. If you're growing a tomato, a low yield tomato variety like a cherry tomato in winter in a greenhouse in the UK, then that's going to have quite a big impact. And then you fly it over to Australia. The climate impact of that packet of tomatoes on the vine, cherry tomatoes on the vine, can actually be quite large. And then if you add into that an animal product, so if you're growing beef and then flying it, beef being a dead cow. Jeez, I'm so indoctrinated. Let's just call it what it is. If you're growing a cow and then you're killing it and then you're flying it over to Australia from the UK, then that's going to be a very, very energy intensive food item. And that comes across in the book. So for anyone who's interested in the environment, you can definitely get a few tips, hints with your food choices. They also take into account transport. So riding a bike when you're powered by bananas is a bit different from when you're riding a bike powered by animal products, with bananas coming out a lot more environmentally friendly. And then if you're riding on a train compared to a bus and a plane, they go through those steps as well. Buses and coaches, if they're full, being more efficient. Trains being slightly heavier have a bigger impact per person seat of weight. And then the last one being a plane. if you're flying first class. You're taking up more room per space. You can fit less people on the plane if everyone flies first class. So that is the most carbon sort of intensive thing. Flying less, eating more plants, and using less in general. So if you don't have to grab a plastic bag or a paper bag, if you bring your own backpack each time, that works out as a lot more environmentally friendly. It all adds up, but the thing is here that they also stress that one cheeseburger is like, hundreds and hundreds of plastic bags, thousands. It's months of water use for your shower. So they do keep stressing the food production is an easy thing to change that has a big impact. And then there's things like insulation in your housing. So if you change to, I think it was 270 millimeter insulation from no insulation, that pays itself back. So the carbon you use initially pays itself back over a few years. It's the same with solar to a lesser extent and wind to a lesser extent. Insulation was actually one of the best ways to bang for your buck in terms of climate. And they also said the impact of having a child. If we say that 2,000 tons is sort of a high impact person on the environment throughout their lifetime, 2,000 tons of emissions, then a low impact person is like 100 or 150 or 200, then you can see, first of all, how big of a difference someone who has a low impact has compared to someone who lives in a Western country doing the normal things people do in a Western country, and how choosing not to have a child can also have a very big impact. And they do stress that point as well. And it's a great book. It's a great read. There's just plenty of examples that they give in the book. I highly recommend it for anyone who's interested in reducing their impact on the environment. And if you call yourself an environmentalist, I think first you have to look at your diet and assess whether, if you're eating animal products, if you're eating things that are shipped and freighted, if you're eating things that are air freighted, when you have other options available, then perhaps you're not doing all you can. So thanks for listening. That's another Power Plant podcast. I've got another book that I've finished as well and another one on the go. So I'll keep these book reviews coming in, but let me know what you think about them. How bad are bananas? Catch up.